Hello.
Yeah, I like this light on me. It's spooky, eh? I'm glad I had my hair cut yesterday. Looks like an old man.
I don't want to be a bit.
Shall we start with the pints down here?
Yeah.
And then kind of pick them up? Let's get them in the shop. Which you're right, never mind.
Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Pint of Paranormal, and today I'm all the way down in Wellington and I'm sitting here with my mate James Gilberd from Strange Occurrences. James, good to see you again, mate.
Yeah, good to see you, Mark.
This is my annual jaunt down to Wellington where I get to catch up with James and hang out and have a pint and discuss all things spooky, so good to see you again, mate.
Yeah, I'm supposed to jack up a paranormal investigation for you, but I haven't quite succeeded in
That's
doing
alright,
it yet.
that's alright.
Busy time of year. Shall we do this pint thing?
Yeah, so cheers, mate. Can you remember what you got there?
There's something with coconut in it.
Some coconut thing?
Yeah,
I've got a
yeah.
Maidstone something or
Had
other.
a taste. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, you're in the craft beer capital here, so
It's a good one, that's a really good one. Yeah. I like
that
that.
is nice.
That's good.
Probably cost about $48 a pint.
It's alright.
Yeah.
Okay, so James,
Yeah.
what have you been up to, man? I haven't seen you for about a year. When was the last time I saw you?
Probably this time last year.
Was this Christmas last year, wasn't it?
When did I come up to the pump house? That was
We gave Christmas presents, wasn't it? So it
Yeah.
was about Christmas time. Yeah, so
that
Christmas,
was
so,
about
yeah.
this time last
Yeah.
year.
So,
Yeah.
so much happened in Wellington since then?
I've been pretty busy in my photography business. We've done a couple of investigations, but I wouldn't say it's been a very busy year for Strange Occurrences. We've got a couple of new members who are a lot younger than me and more enthusiastic, and we did a real nice investigation at the old Thistle Inn, which is down the Thorndon end of Wellington, not far from the railway station. It is the oldest pub in New Zealand that is still on its original site. I mean, like every place, it's probably burnt down a couple of times and been rebuilt, but it is original and old. And we had a real nice investigation down there. We had a couple of people from the pub join us for the investigation, and a friend of one of the our team is actually a professional historian, and she came along. And boy, you know, she came back after the investigation with all this stuff that about the people around the hotel and its history that I couldn't have found. You know, I did a good old dig around, but she just found layers and layers of stuff that a professional historian knows how to find, and all these stories. And she said, I can dig deeper if you like. So, well, I think this is actually quite a bit. This is really, really cool. So we got this sort of deep level of historical information about the place. I'd have to say that nothing happened during the investigation, which is actually not that unusual. You know, there's a few stories about the place that various staff members had reported of seeing an apparition of a former pub owner, and this place is so old that Te Rapraha used to drink there. It was right on the waterfront in the 19th century, and he would actually come up in his walker, hook it up, and just step up into the hotel.
No way.
I think that, you know, he would drink whiskey, and I think they were like, some of the staff were too intimidated by him to charge him for his drinks. I mean, he had quite a reputation. So
it's great.
Te Rapraha drank there. And it was right on the waterfront. There was hardly anything in Wellington at that time. It was just a cluster of little low buildings, you know, around the waterfront. So it has that history, and some of the experiences people had were more recent. They'd seen a more recent owner of the pub who was quite a large personality. He had appeared there. We didn't find anything on the night, but we had a real good look down in the old cellar, which is quite small and tight and cobwebby, and, you know, upstairs and some of the old accommodation rooms, which are now convention rooms and things. So that was a nice night. We had a few new people with us. The other kind of fairly major investigation we did was up in Patia, which is South Taranaki. It's between Whanganui and New Plymouth, right? And there used to be the Party of Freezing Works, which was a big works, which closed down in about 1983. And when that closed, the town became basically unemployed. And that's where the Party of Murray Club kind of arose, so that put Partia on the map after the freezing works closed. We stayed in an old hotel that actually Denise, my wife, and I, who's also a team member, we'd stayed there about 15 years earlier for a night. And, you know, it was one of those old-fashioned New Zealand bars, and there's some old guys in there drinking from first thing in the morning, and we come in and we get photographed behind the bar. Like, they insisted on taking a photo because we were staying the night there, so we sort of pretended to pull pints and they photographed us. And, you know, when we went there recently, we went into that bar room and it had just been used as a storeroom, and all the stuff was pushed in there, as well as some of the family stuff. So the old bar was still there, but the stuff heaped on top of it, and all the old bar furniture was there, stacked up. It was quite junky. And, you know, we sort of moved a few things and we reenacted that photo from like 15 years previous. And the people living there, you know, they bought this place, and they're a Mormon family, and they've got about 9 children, 8 of them living at home. So there's like 14 bedrooms upstairs. So they were living upstairs because they needed a big house, and they bought this old pub, this old hotel, and it's their family home. And they're really, really interesting. And we got into this discussion, of course, over dinner of, well, how do you reconcile these experiences you've had in the hotel, because several family members had had pretty distinct experiences in there, you know, seeing things and hearing things, which are pretty, you know, fairly major experiences. And they were quite cool with it, you know. There was no conflict, there was no problem. Hey, you know, we're spiritual beings and we accept that there is more to life than just ordinary physical reality, and they had no conflict with their Mormon religion, which they're fairly heavily enmeshed in, and having these kind of paranormal spiritual experiences in the hotel to do with its history, because it does again date back to the 19th century. It's quite old, and we didn't experience anything. We even got up at 3 o'clock in the morning. It was really cold. It was actually really cold in the hotel, and we couldn't find anything that they had experienced, but we had a good time. They were nice people.
That's what it's all about, isn't it?
We weren't really able to explain anything that they described, though, because it just didn't happen when we were around, and you're always hopeful that it will, but you're only there for one night, whereas they've been there for like 6 or 7 years, you know.
But you've got to go. You've got to go to experience these things.
Yeah.
You're not going to experience them sitting at home on the computer. So
no.
You've got to go there. So
yeah. Well, this is the thing. I mean, Strange Occurrences has always been built on the idea of, like, you've got to wade into the water. I don't like this armchair dismissal of things, like, and I have to say, I am a member of New Zealand Skeptics.
I don't hold that against you.
I am a skeptic, but I'm also a believer in certain aspects of the paranormal, and for that reason, you know, I'm in their interesting category. But then again, I am a bearded, white, middle-class male with a university education, so I fit their profile pretty well. I just don't have a PhD like everyone else did. But, you know, they're a bunch of knowledgeable people, but they have got these kind of pat dismissals and stuff. And, you know, we've discussed this quite a few times in the past, where without actually leaving the computer, it's, oh, well, that'll just be the building materials expanding and making a noise, or it'll be, you know, pareidolia, or it will be something else that happens.
Illness or something.
Without kind of going down there and visiting the place, talking to the people, interviewing them, listening to them carefully, and drawing them out on what they've experienced, and then going and having a look and seeing, well, that's really interesting, like trying to find out whether there's something about the place, about the building, some light effect, plumbing, electrical, doors that might not work properly and might not stay closed, or whatever physical effect you can find about a place, and really look for it, you know.
That's what it's all about. I mean, it's just so easy to dismiss things. If you're negative about things and you basically decided right from the start that they don't exist, then anything will be an excuse, anything will be an explanation, whether it fits or not. Even if it fits just that little bit, if it fits just slightly, that'll do. It's good enough.
And I mean, my experience over 12 or 13 years of, meeting people and talking to them about their experiences is most people are not lying to you.
Exactly.
I've had probably in that time maybe 2 cases of people who have just been trying to get a bit of publicity for their business, so they're just making stuff up because they wanted the publicity. But the other 99 out of 100 people, they're straight up like, this happened and this is what I experienced, and they're telling the truth as they experienced it.
Whether it's paranormal
or not,
they experienced something they couldn't understand or explain at the time. I know, that's exactly right. It's like I refuse to believe that everybody is lying or everybody is deluded or everybody is making it up. I refuse to believe that.
I think there are people who are attention seekers. I haven't met too many of them, but they are around. Probably not as much in New Zealand as maybe in some countries, but they're not the normal type of person. I haven't met very many of them. Mostly people actually don't want attention. They're kind of embarrassed or a bit apprehensive about talking to anyone, and they just want to find out what happened. They want to actually talk to someone about it who's actually going to listen to them and take them seriously and not laugh at them.
Yeah. Well, that's right. Well, that's what we're here for, isn't it? Just to listen and
well, in
find answers if you can.
the case of the Mormon family, there was 3 people in the family, both parents and the eldest son who was living there at the time. They had all described quite distinct personal experiences. No reason to believe they're lying. I mean, they're pretty avid church people. I don't think they're in any way liars. And they just described what they'd seen in matter-of-fact terms. And we couldn't actually discount any of it. We couldn't say, oh, that's such and such, or you saw this because... We couldn't explain any of it. We weren't able to offer them any kind of rational dismissal of their experiences. The only thing they mentioned is that, seeing like something like the old Covent coach pulling up. And I mean, the closest thing we could get to that was when traffic would pass at night. There's some pretty strange shadows thrown on the neighbouring buildings, and if you were kind of half asleep, you could possibly construe those shadows as like a coach pulling up, but we couldn't really make that link, and that's about the closest we got to explaining anything. So we had to leave that one as like 100% unresolved, and we just had an interesting time, and they're nice people, and it was cool to stay at the place. And that is just a cool thing about paranormal investigation, isn't it?
And you walked away saying, I don't know. And I think that's important.
What happened,
I think that is the key thing. I think it's really important in this field. If you don't know something, you say it. I do not know. And I'm sort of training myself. I'm trying to come across as being a knowledgeable, intelligent, educated, semi-educated person in the field, but there are times where I don't know, and if I try to make up explanations without any backing, then I'm just basically deluding myself, and I don't like having any delusion in this field. You can't have delusion.
Sometimes you can find a physical thing though. Like, I remember one place we went to, and a flat full of somewhat terrified young students, right? And they talked about this door opening, and I had a bit of a play with it. And in all honesty, the door latch would easily open itself. It was old, it was rickety, and it didn't take much. And for some reason, there was a bit of string or a wire hanging down that when you shut the door, it would get caught in the door. So I coiled that up, got it out of the way, actually fixed the door latch, put a couple of fresh screws into it and tightened it up, because the whole thing was a security risk. You could just push the front door open with your hand. And, I think that explained that particular incident that they described, that it was just a physical thing in the building. But some of the other stuff they talked about, we couldn't explain. Do you know what I mean? I mean, if you can find a reason for a thing, say, well, look, it could be this. You see how this works? That could be the reason for what you experience. But I'm never going to say outright, like, oh, come on, it's just a faulty door latch, you're just, delusional. I would never say that to someone. Because it may be, it may not be.
It could be part of the factor, it could not,
Yeah, the thing is, usually when someone experiences something, hey, we're not there at the time. We don't know what they experienced exactly. But you do try to find possible explanations on the site while you're there. You're looking for stuff. You're looking for weird light effects of passing traffic with headlights refracting through old glass or something. I mean, just stuff like that. What could it be? What would explain it? And if you weren't looking for those things quite actively, you wouldn't be doing your job. So we do that, but we'll never outright dismiss what people describe, what people explain.
Have you ever, in your time, thought genuinely that a place is genuinely haunted?
Well, we've never declared it publicly.
No.
Because...
But in your own mind, would you say, yeah?
Yeah. I'd say we've never, gone and said, this house is haunted, in the words of...
Not publicly, yeah.
Not publicly. Because if you're going to make a claim like that, you've got to be able to back it up. With substantial evidence, right? And as you know, substantial evidence is very, very hard. No matter how much equipment you've got, you're very lucky if you actually get anything. It's always over there, or just after you've packed something up, or you just miss it, or it doesn't quite record, or even if it does, you're not quite sure about it. Hard to get hard evidence. And even if you got it to the point that you or I would be satisfied with it, a scientist or a critical thinking skeptic will never believe you, or they might accuse you of faking it. The old fever hospital in Wellington, we've done about 5 or 6 investigations there pre its time of being converted to the SPCA. Frankly, I don't think there's much point investigating it anymore now that it's the SPCA. It's well populated and used as a functional business. But we did 3 fairly major investigations there while it was empty. There's a lot of history of people experiencing things there. We experienced stuff there that we could not explain, and it was always late at night, right at the end of the investigation after most people had left. It just suddenly, it's like someone flicked a switch and the place goes bad. And we experienced enough things there to make you think that there's stuff going on there. We do not know what it is, but it seems to be a bit out of the realm of normal. Inverlochy House was another one which we have investigated repeatedly, and we've had good access to it, so we've been able to go there whenever we like.
I enjoyed that place.
Yeah.
It was nice.
I think
There's plenty of people living there though.
Yeah, well, there's always been a living caretaker, right?
Yeah.
But I would say that, I don't know if it's familiarity, because my wife Denise works there about 3 or 4 days a week these days. She's an art teacher. I've been there so many times now, but I genuinely think it's sort of died down. Like, if there was some activity there between up until the mid-2000s, maybe late 2000s, and then, the last few years, I would say it's gone a bit quiet. And I go there a lot, and I have a bit of time, like if I'm waiting for Denise to finish packing up her art class or something, I'll have a wander around, and I do not get the same sense of it as I used to maybe 4 or 5 years ago. It's like it's kind of changed and calmed down in some way, which,
happens, yeah.
Then again, we haven't done a proper investigation there for 5 or 6 years, so it might be worth having another look.
Revisit, yes. Yeah.
So there's a couple of places. I think there are a few places around Wellington that we haven't been able to get adequate access to. In fact, where we are at the moment, we're in the basement of the Embassy Theatre, which has been converted into a bar. So some years ago, they dug all this out and opened it out, and they made a couple of small theatres down here and a bar. And this place in itself is interesting. And when they were doing this work, the manager was interviewed for the Dominion Post, and he talked about all the renovation work and construction work they did here seemed to stir something up. there's also been cases of people who have worked here as cleaners and other late night staff actually being terrified by things and leaving their jobs. So there's something about this place. It's been here since the 1920s. It's a large Art Deco style building. It's gone through a lot, and I would love to do a proper investigation here, but we haven't been able to open the doors. And you know, even this place we're sitting in is kind of interesting, I reckon. Come down here, but I go to a few movies here. It's a real good theatre. But we just haven't been able to crack it. I mean, we haven't been able to get permission to get out and do an investigation.
Just keep plugging away at it.
Yeah.
Harassing them about it eventually.
St James Theatre would be another one. I've done a bit of work there as a photographer, and I've had the opportunity, as I'm kind of winding down my photo shoot late at night, to do a bit of personal exploration, you know, when I finish shooting. And there's a couple of places in there which I would say, you know, the St James Theatre would reputedly be one of the more haunted theatres in New Zealand. There's a lot of stories and a lot of history, and I think there's, you know, you've been in there, we were in there that time.
The Opera House?
Opera House, yep.
I enjoyed the Opera House, that was nice.
Yep.
What was on with the upstairs room, that upstairs workshop room?
Awesome, where they made the sets, they painted the sets. I love that place.
Is it St James Opera?
That's the Opera House.
Yeah, that was brilliant.
Yeah, no idea that existed.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Just the history ingrained into the walls and the writing.
I love going through places like that, because old buildings, particularly, we're talking about a big back room in the Opera House above the stage, and the room runs the full width of the building, and there's kind of a gap where they could drop the backdrops down when they're dropping down to the stage. So it's a big high thing, and there's this mighty fall if you happen to step through the gap. But there's old stuff there that nobody's touched for decades. And people just leave their imprint in a place, you know, be it physical or spiritual, that you get a sense of all the activity, human activity that's gone on in the place. People sort of imprint themselves. And I think people with large personalities who are really embedded in a place, they imprint themselves quite strongly on it. Peter McCleavey, the famous New Zealand art dealer, he died a couple of years ago. He was a bit of a mentor of mine in my own business, and he had a gallery in Hubert Street, Wellington, which still is run by his daughter. But that place, we have done an investigation on it. It's actually in the book, Spooked, which we didn't name the building at the time, but hey, it's in there and everyone recognises it. And you know, you feel that when you go in there, and I'm not saying this in a paranormal way, but Peter McCleavey is kind of still there, like it was very, very much his place, and he was a strong, distinctive person, and his personality still kind of permeates it. Recently the carpet was taken up, and the old chaise lounge which he used to have in the gallery that you almost equated with him, it was like this personal piece of furniture that was like a trademark. That's been hiffed out, and that's kind of a shame, because it was like this kind of important piece of furniture that he was often photographed on, was often associated with the gallery with him. And it had a history of its own, and it's actually gone. And when that piece of furniture went, it's almost like a bit of Peter went with it. I think that's a bit sad.
Interesting. You mentioned your wife Denise. That takes me to the next question. One of your very first ever experiences. You've mentioned it in a few other interviews around the place, I've heard. It's one that I wanted to touch on with you because I've personally been quite fascinated by it. Can you run through that one?
Yeah, well, it forms the prologue to the book Spooked, which we had published by Random House New Zealand quite a few years ago now, but it's still out there. And I'll tell you what, you can, if you look up Spooked Exploring the Paranormal and you go to the sort of free preview on Amazon, you can read this thing, right? So it is there free available to read.
Oh, okay.
And I still think it reads well. You know, I read it back occasionally. I think we got that about right in the book. We nailed that down about as far as we can nail it down. My wife Denise, she has a twin, right? And I always think twins are just a little bit more keyed into things than the rest of us. So I played in a covers band back then. We're talking about New Year's Day 1999, I think it was, it might have been 98. It was a long time ago, late last century. And we'd played up at the Chateau on Mount Ruapehu, which again is an interesting place.
Cool place.
Yeah. So we did this gig there, and it was a pretty long, New Year's Eve gig. And we were pretty tired after it, and the next morning we packed up the gear and we started driving back to Wellington. We said, no, let's just take our time. So we visited the site of the train crash in 1955, the river that the train crashed into off the bridge, whatever that's called.
What was it called?
Yeah. And that's a place in itself, because like 100 and something people were killed there and drowned in the river from a train crash. We went there. That's a place we're visiting if you're around Mount Ruapehu. And then we went to Ratahi, and near Ratahi is a park, and on the past site is a Ratana church on the hill, which has been much photographed. Robert Morrison took a famous photo, everyone photographs it, and I wanted a photo, and I didn't want to photograph it from the road, so we went round and we approached the marae, and there were 3 old Maori gentlemen sitting there. They all looked like men in a Goldie painting actually, and I asked if we can go on to the site and take a photo of the building, and they kind of said reluctantly. I think they let us go on there. They didn't, but it didn't kind of feel good, it felt a bit wrong. So we went up there, took a few photos. The church at the time was a bit run down actually. There were a few broken panels and things on it. It looked a bit careworn and neglected. I took a few photos. I didn't feel good about the whole thing, so we left pretty quickly. And then we drove down. There's an old road that goes from Ratahi down to Wanganui, follows the gorge, and it's quite a creepy old road. They set the movie Vigil down there, which is, if you've seen it, it's sort of New Zealand Gothic, Vincent Ward, early 80s New Zealand film. It's quite a haunting film in itself. And by the time we got to Wanganui, it had been a pretty strange day. It was just an odd, one of those days that just didn't feel right. We'd been to a few uncomfortable places. The road trip down was like deserted. We got to Wanganui and there's nobody about, like the main street is deserted. There's a couple of kids, I remember, kicking a Coke can down the street, and you could hear them from hundreds of metres, it was that quiet. We bought a pizza, we ate it down by the river, we went to our hotel room, watched a bit of TV, cup of tea, went to bed, and I'm going to say it was 1 o'clock in the morning, we were both awoken by what appeared to be someone in the room physically attacking us, both of us, from the end of the bed. And we sat up and we kind of fought them off. And I recall physically pushing them away from us. We weren't pushing each other because we sat up side by side and we were facing each other. And we sort of fought this thing off. And Denise managed to get the light on. And this was upsetting because we thought there was someone in the room, basically. Someone had broken into the room and was like attacking us. Got the light on, checked around the room, nobody there. And you're here standing on end now just talking about it. I know people say it feels cold, but I think that's more of a physiological reaction, like because your hair starts standing on end and you feel chill. I don't think that's the air temperature so much as how you physically feel. It's like a physiological reaction.
True, yeah.
Well, that's what it felt like anyway. It felt like the room was cold, but it probably wasn't. I didn't have a thermometer handy. It wasn't a paranormal investigation then. I wasn't doing that then. I'd never even really heard about it. I didn't know that people did that. And it was just, we were upset, right? Because you know what it's like if you wake up from a bad nightmare, right? And it can be upsetting. But you realise that it was a nightmare, and you go back to sleep, right? Probably, mostly. But we both had the same experience, and I cannot look. I've read every book by every skeptic on everything about paranormal, and nothing in any of it adequately explains that feeling or that experience. Right? I cannot explain it with anything. And we were terrified. We couldn't settle. We tried reading, we tried watching TV. We had another cup of tea, turned the lights off a couple of times, turned them back on. And after like an hour of this, it was like, forget about it. Just no way, Jose. We were upset and shaken and terrified. And I just wrote out a check because we still had a check back then. Wrote out a check, left it on the coffee table with a note, and we just fled. We left at, I don't know, 2 in the morning or something like that. The time it took us to get our gear together and just leave. And we stopped at a petrol station in Foxton on the way back, which is, I don't know, 100k or something. And, went to get petrol, and the guy thought we were like a couple of drug addicts keeping robbers. We must have been white sheets, and we're still really like upset.
Yeah.
And we got back to Denise's flat in Wellington, and you could hear the bull chorus and that by the and it wasn't actually till we got back to Wellington that we began to start to relax. And Denise was upset for months after it. She had difficulty sleeping for several months. It was bad. And as I said, I still cannot really explain it. And I think that sat there with us for a while. We're not religious, we're not church people, so, had I been, I would have gone and talked to a minister or a priest or something about it, but I didn't know anyone to talk to. And as far as I know, there were no one in New Zealand, no paranormal investigators I'd never even heard of paranormal investigation, And it wasn't until some years later, like 2005 or so, those programs started to come on TV, Taps and Most Haunted and stuff like that. And I think that's when we thought, we can actually make a paranormal team, we could do that stuff and be the people that you can actually come and talk to if something like that happens. Because as far as we knew, there was no one to talk to. So that's what we kind of wanted to do. We wanted to help people who had those kind of experiences. I don't know if we've been that successful in that. What we try and do is not make things worse for people, I guess.
Well, those TV shows have certainly changed a lot. The way people think, the way people react, and just people's perceptions of the world and all the mysteries around it. It's shaped a lot of people's mindsets, which I find amazing.
TV, although people don't watch TV as such, and there was a lot of paranormal programs on TV in sort of the mid-2000s, late 2000s. I stopped watching those, I've never watched any of those Zach Baggins shows and that, I just got sick of it by then. But there's a thing on at the moment called Paranormal Survivor. It's a Canadian show. It's on Thursday nights on Choice. And I watched it the other night. I find it fascinating because they interview the real people and they explain their experiences and then they reenact them with actors, right? And of the show I watched the other night, they had 3 different scenarios there, 3 different people's experience. And two of the experiences, you sit there and you kind of analyse, you try and analyse the people and how they describe things. And I thought out of 2 of them, I thought, this person's maybe a little bit fantasy prone, or this person's maybe under a lot of stress and magnifying things. But there was one couple whom I thought, those people are straight up. That is serious, real experience they're having. And it's usually the same when I watch that show. There'll be a couple of instances where I think, I think their imagination's probably getting the better of them, and then other people you think, hell, I'd like to talk to those people and meet them and listen to them and see the place, because I think there's something going on there. And it depends how it pans out. What you find yourself trying to do is sort of read what really went on from the way people describe it. And sometimes it's just psychology. You can kind of try to weigh up how the person explained it and what they might have experienced, and whether it's sleep paralysis madness or just maybe being a little bit fantasy prone.
Yeah, and I've found in the future, just through talking through to witnesses and experiences about their encounters, the initial story when you first hear it may sound completely fantastic. Like they saw this apparition, it was a full-bodied apparition that was coming down the stairs towards them, and then it picked up something and threw it across the room, and da-da-da. But when you start stripping it down, and you start analysing it, and you start breaking that story out into pieces, into individual small pieces, you find out little possible explanations to each piece. And then when you start questioning every piece of that scenario, you find alternative explanations every little individual piece of it. And I mean, I've talked to people that have said, I see spirits all the time. I talk to them all the time. I see them all the time. I hear them, and I can tell them, and they'll come and talk to me whenever I want to. And but then you say, okay, that's great, it's fantastic. But you start stripping it down, and you say, well, okay, when you say they talk to you all the time, are you hearing this with your ears? And they go, oh yeah, with your ears, yeah. So if you're hearing it with your ears, we should be able to record it with an audio recorder. And are you seeing it with your eyes? And I'm like, yeah, I can see them straight up, they're right in front of me. So if you're seeing them with your eyes, we should be able to take a photo or record it with a video. You can see it with your eyes. And a lot of times they'll come back and they'll say, well, they don't actually like us taking photos of them. They won't allow me to film them, and that kind of thing. See, but you're seeing with your eyes. If it's with your eyes and your ears, we can document these things. And then they start backing away, and the story starts getting, there's a bit of backstepping going on there, and you find out that the story that they were telling isn't as accurate as they told it.
Yeah.
And then you start to start questioning: is it a mental state? Isn't it an attention-seeking thing? Is it a personality trait? You know, you have to be careful because you're standing on people's toes and you're assuming things.
Yeah.
So, and you don't want to assume things about people.
I'd like to just back up on what I was saying about the TV show before.
Yeah.
Because when you see something on TV, you are not getting the full story, ever, right? It's always edited, it's always selective, and you can only sit there as a viewer and passively insert yourself into the situation and try and imagine the questions you would ask. And it's not until this is why you have to meet the people, not this happened to my brother-in-law, but this happened to me. You have to talk to that person, yourself, not by email. You have to talk to them in person. Then you can get into stuff then. You get a sense of the person
and the body language.
The body language.
You can see the sincerity in their face.
Yeah. Or not sometimes, but mostly you can.
Yeah.
And you get to ask the questions. And you get a sense, and if you can be in the place, it's even better, because then you can get a sense of the house or the building or a location, and you sort of know, and I know it sounds a bit, but you sort of know when a place isn't right. You'll walk into it and I don't know if I'd want to live here. Do you know what I mean? You get that sense, for whatever reason, I don't know. There's a lot of reasons, they might not be paranormal ones. You've got to do the investigation yourself. You can't do it from the TV. You can't analyse videos. You can't analyse stuff that people post on Facebook, really. You've got to get a lot closer than that. I mean, have you ever heard of a police detective, like, just looking at a few photos and a couple of videos and figuring out a crime? No, they go down there and they crawl on the ground and sniff things and pick things up. Yeah. And, they talk to the people themselves. They don't have their constable interview them. They do the interviewing.
Well, the word investigation itself, it takes a whole different meaning when you put it into the paranormal field, because investigation could just mean going on a ghost hunt.
And I know. I don't like making that comparison with police investigation too much, because one, that's a bit scary, because usually someone's done something rather wrong. Two, they're trying to trip you up. Like a police detective, if they're interviewing someone, they're trying to catch them out and expose them for lying or whatever, or expose an inconsistency. Whereas when we interview someone, we're not trying to expose them. We just want to get to the nub of what they're talking about, and it's different. We're also genuinely, I think, coming from believing them rather than not believing them. Police tend to think everyone's a criminal Well, I have more faith in people, I don't.
I like to think that people aren't lying, that people aren't crazy. Well, if they're crazy, that's fine.
But then again, our senses aren't that reliable either.
No.
And you know that if something happens and you interview 5 people that saw it happen, you will get 5 different stories.
Yeah.
You know, if it's like a road accident or something like that, you'll get 5 different stories from 5 different people. And that's just the way human perception, memory, recall, how all that works is complicated and it's inconsistent. We can be fooled, and the idea of I saw it with my own eyes, so it must be true, is not that reliable a thing to fall back on. I think paranormal experience is much more complex than that. I also think that I've never encountered anything like poltergeist activity. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, I've just never personally had any contact with it. But if you had poltergeist activity, it is physical, right? Things move, things fly around, things appear and disappear. When it comes to ghosts and other kinds of spiritual things, I'm inclined to think that it's more telepathic, it's more psychological. Like, normally there's no physical substance there that you could easily photograph. I think that the human mind is a great thing, and it's very complex, and we understand so little of it, that I think that we as humans, some of us can perceive things that cannot. They don't sort of physically register with cameras and stuff. I think we can perceive things which are actually beyond our normal three-dimensional sort of lifestyle, our three-dimensional limits, and I think that's where it gets interesting. I don't think you can necessarily photograph those things or sound record them. Maybe you can, maybe you can't, but I think a lot of, like, I think the thing that I described with Denise and Wanganui, I think that was a kind of psychological attack. I don't think it was a real person or a real physical entity in the room, even though it felt like it. It felt like a kind of like a mind attack, like a psychological experience that we both shared.
How would you explain the connection, though, between the both of you?
Well,
at the
we
same time?
either we both experienced it, or one of us experienced it, and telepathically the other person experienced it.
Through the power of suggestion?
Well,
You're
wasn't
experiencing some sort of terror, so the person
Tell you what.
experiences terror?
Yeah, maybe. But when we're talking about suggestion, we're not talking about when you describe what you feel and someone else says, hey, I feel that too.
Yeah.
There wasn't time for that. And it wasn't until we got back to Wellington that we really started comparing notes on that. And we realised, like the next day, whatever, actually our experience was very, very close, in the sense that the more we discussed it later, and I'd written notes down, right? Boy, I wish I could find them. I lost them. I wrote a full set of notes on what I experienced as soon as I got back home, and then we discussed it more over the next, days and weeks, and we realised that it was a lot more parallel when we first did. There was a lot more in common. I regret that I lost these notes, and I turned the house over a couple of times looking for them.
No, I just found it fascinating, the whole story, the whole concept of...
Well, it was very intense, and having never, our generation, we've never been at war or anything, we haven't experienced anything of that nature. So I haven't had much life experience of real fear, that was the most fear I'd ever experienced by a large margin. I'm not used to it, If you've been in a war or something, or some sort of life-threatening situation, you would experience intense fear and trauma, but I've never had that experience, knock on wood. So this was the scariest thing that ever happened to me, by a big margin, I've had a relatively sheltered existence, never been in like a plane crash or anything, do you know what I mean? So I haven't had that kind of level of fear in any other situation. And it was scary, believe me, it was.
For both
scary.
parties. For both
we
parties,
were
yeah.
And something that stays with you for a week, a month afterwards.
fantastic. Well, I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, it was.
I just love it.
Yeah.
I'm kind of jealous in a way because I haven't really experienced anything like it myself.
I have had other experiences in the past when I was younger. Most of them which I'd like to shove away because they're sort of more personal. But, you know, I'm not going to name anyone here, but there was a situation where I was on a photography course and we were making a movie and we were staying in a place. We were at breakfast the next day. And I said to a friend of mine on the course, oh, I had a dream about you and so last night, and I described this dream. And her jaw was at the table, and she went white as a sheet, and she shut up and didn't say anything. And like a couple of months later, after the photo course finished, or at the end of the year, you know, she told me, and she said that dream that you had was described pretty much exactly what was happening in real life to her that night. And you know, that was kind of uncanny. It was, I had no idea, like I didn't know anything that would have led me to have had that dream. And then she described the situation to me later, and things dropped into place. And I thought, holy cow, that's really interesting. That was just straight out telepathy, you know. And I'm inclined to think that telepathy exists, and if it does, I think it explains a lot of things. I think if you allow for human mind contact, it explains a lot of ghost experiences, it explains a lot of very unusual events. Now, I know there's still been a lot of experimentation on it over the years, and with various like rolling dice and Xena cards and things. None of that convinces me, and I don't trust most of the experimenters. But I think either in very extreme situations, like when your life is threatened or possibly when you die, the mind is capable of protecting itself. And there are so many cases of, you know, someone in a car crash or something in South Dakota, and someone in Devon in England knows about it at the time, and they could not have possibly known. And it turns out that, you know, I think when you're in a situation, a very traumatic situation, I think that the brain can transmit to others. And if you think about it in an evolutionary sense, that ability would bestow an evolutionary advantage. An evolutionary advantage.
Yes.
Like, you know, humans are like, well, we're primates. We existed in family and extended groups and relied on each other for protection. So say there's a predator or some threatening situation to the group, if there was a telepathic connection within that group, it would enhance the survival of that genetic ability, right? Now, we don't live in that kind of situation anymore. You know, the way civilization has turned out, we're not constantly under a threat from predators and so forth. We don't live in those kind of tribal groups or family groups anymore. We don't need that ability. So that, evolutionary speaking, that would possibly dissipate. Like our sense of smell, which is barely any use anymore apart from experiencing fine craft beer. We don't need it to survive anymore.
That's right. That's right.
Things, you know, if we don't need them anymore, they evolve out. A lot of us are not physically strong enough to have survived 100 or 200 or 10,000 years ago. You know, we wouldn't be physically strong enough to survive. We would have died in childhood. Do you know what I mean? Yet today, in today's situation, we survive. What I'm saying is telepathy potentially bestows an evolutionary advantage, and we may have lost that largely over millennia. And if it exists in extremis in really traumatic situations, or when two people are just on a particular wavelength and there's some kind of connection, which I think that I've had with, you know, 2 or 3 people in my life where I've just been able to sort of somehow be tuned to them. You share something which is a little bit mysterious. You know, you can actually sort of I don't know, it's hard to explain. But I think it kind of potentially could explain a lot of experiences that people have. And I don't think it's restricted to the present. I think it can spread out over the future and the past. I just think that the universe is a whole lot more complex than most people think it is. And scientists acknowledge this. And you know, the wackiest things you ever hear come from scientists. Parallel universes, you know, many worlds theory. That is like the wackiest thing, but serious scientists came up with that and some of them believe it. But it's far, far wackier than anything that in what we call the paranormal. And quantum physics, oh my god, that's just a world of wackiness that even the quantum physicists don't understand. But it works as a scientific theory. It enables them to design microchips and whatnot.
You pick the most outrageous theories and just strip them back, and start stripping them back, sort of de-engineer them and just strip them back and analyse them and see what you can actually create some reality from.
No, I mean, the wackiest ideas come from scientists, and yet the scientists are often very scathing of paranormal believers. Yet, you know what, they kind of come up with is far wackier than anything we can imagine. If you've ever read a book on quantum physics, you get about halfway through chapter 1 and your brain starts turning inside out.
I've got no idea about any of that stuff. It's beyond me.
It's beyond me too.
I just don't bother with it.
The fact is that even the scientists will say, if you think you understand this, you're deluding yourself. You don't understand it. Even we don't understand it, but it works. Do you know what I mean?
I think at my age now, I've decided that I'm not even going to try and understand any of these sort of, you know, the way out there, sort of physics and science and that sort of stuff. To me, I base my investigation and my research on observation, just going to the places, just basic observational and documentation, and just noting everything down. Just keep it simple, and
we're kind of doing science the way that, like, 18th and 19th century people did science. You know, it was at that time, as an amateur, you could make a real contribution. I mean, photography was invented by amateur scientists, you know. They figured stuff out and learned how to preserve an image. You know, which is, I'm a photographer. Photography is fascinating, you know, and that was largely achieved by these kind of rounded sort of amateurs who, they knew a lot of stuff in a lot of fields and they put stuff together and that worked, or it failed. But these days, there's not really any amateur science because it's so specialised. That if you do a PhD in something, it's some tiny little aspect of some tiny little field, you know. My brother did a PhD on what happens when light strikes various metals and the behaviour of the atoms and how they generate currents, and it's called the anomalous skin effect in metals or something. Back in the early 80s, you know. It's just this tiny specialised thing. I cannot understand it. I can't read his thesis. I don't get it.
I think paranormal research, I think a lot of people try to get too involved, they're trying to get too technical. I think for me personally, I've stripped my investigations and my research right back. I've simplified it as much as I possibly can to the levels that I personally can understand. I don't want to start thinking about things I don't understand. I just I do my workings with techniques that I understand, and I work with equipment that I understand. And everything I do now, I understand what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, how I'm doing it, and I keep it very simple. I mean, I'm not a hugely educated person myself, so I work with what I've got. And I think a lot of people try to dive into this whole paranormal field being too scientific or too technical, and they're well out of their depth, and they have no idea what their EMF meter is actually for, or what it's doing.
No, you're absolutely right, Mark.
I think you've got to be realistic here. Oh, what's happened here?
It's got a bit of a tip.
Hang on. Technical.
I think the beer fumes are affecting it.
Technical difficulties.
I totally agree with you. And if you look at the way paranormal investigation was done in the past before we had all these gadgets like this phone.
Yes.
It was pretty simple. It was notebook and film camera and a few other things that didn't really introduce too much of their own anomalies. Yet you have these ludicrous things like ghost boxes now, which are not
Don't get me started.
they're not serious investigation equipment, right? And I see people on TV shows using them. Those things are designed to sell to paranormal investigators, and they're full of stuff that people have put in there to keep you kind of entertained, right?
Yeah.
And they're entertainment tools, right? They're not investigation devices. You don't know what's going on with the thing, you don't know what it's thinking or how it's programmed, and you cannot use it to deduce anything about the situation. It's bollocks.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with people playing around with them, but don't bring it to investigations and say the ghost box gave us this evidence. That is just bollocks.
Well, there's a whole fad at the moment that's come out of it. It's called ITC, and it's just basically this whole investigational fad based around ghost boxes and spirit boxes and oviluses and digital media that spits out words and voices and things like this, and that's become this whole new investigative tool now that basically rules the paranormal world. And
people are being marketed to, right?
Yeah.
And people make these things and they're marketing them, and people like us are buying them because there's a market there, right?
Yeah.
But people
I
are being
buy them myself.
manipulated. Yeah, well, they're interesting, aren't they?
Yeah.
I like gadgets, but
Yeah.
I think you're probably right to strip it back. With Strange Occurrences, when we formed, we were very much influenced by Harry Price and the old school investigators, and we kind of there's a group in based in Palmerston North called Phoenix Paranormal, right? And they really helped us get going because they got a lot of investigations and they invited us along. We really cut our teeth, and Phoenix were probably more like Taps or whoever you saw on TV at the time. They had all the video cameras and all the gear, right? And we were more old school. And they kept calling us old school, they kept calling us new school, and we had a lot of fun, and they were nice people, and we did a lot of really cool investigations and kind of cut our teeth. But what does an EMF meter read? Who here understands electromagnetic fields? Who knows what James Clerk Maxwell contributed to physics? And that was quite a long time ago. Who understands that stuff? Because if you're going to use an EMF meter as a device to provide hard evidence, you better know about Maxwell. How many people know about Maxwell? I've read that stuff.
I don't know much, I'll be honest.
Look,
I don't know much.
I don't know much either, and I've read that stuff, and I do not fully understand it, and I cannot adequately explain to you what an electromagnetic field is and how an electric field differs from a magnetic field. I mean, it's quite technical. And how does it relate to the paranormal? I have no idea. But what it does enable you to do, and what some of these tools do help you to do, is understand an environment. Because you cannot see EMF, you cannot see positive or negative ions, but if you've got an ion counter, you can measure them and say, oh, there's a lot of positive ions in this environment. I wonder if that is affecting people's mood. On TV they always say they walk into a room and, oh, I feel a temperature drop. For heaven's sake, you have thermometers, measure it. Did it drop from 20.2 degrees to 17.6? It's the simplest thing to measure it, yet they never do. It's like, if anyone says, boy, it must suddenly feel cold, I've got a thermometer like right there, and I'm measuring it and say, well, actually it's 20 degrees over here and it's 19.8 here.
Okay, and then you've got to figure out why.
Yeah. Well, hang on, it's
What's
only
creating
0.2
this?
of a degree. You can feel that. You measure it, right? You measure stuff. You can measure a cold feeling. You can measure the strength of a draft through a doorway. You can measure the amount of force it takes to push a door. And you can understand an environment with measurement tools. When you introduce gadgets like what's an ovulus or a ghost box or anything like that, using tools that are just marketed to us paranormal investigators. They don't measure anything. They just introduce things that have been put there by people to try and sell you the thing. It's bull.
Well, it's another form of contamination, really, isn't it? It's contaminating the investigation process by adding all these extra things. And without wanting to offend anybody, I personally see things like spirit boxes and that kind of thing, Ouija boards, dowsing rods, pendulums, that kind of thing, very similar to mediums. You start introducing mediums into paranormal investigation. I'm probably going to piss people off by saying this, but I know a lot of lovely mediums, but they do contaminate the paranormal investigation process by introducing things that we can't see, we can't measure, we can't document. They'll introduce names, they'll introduce people into the room that we can't see or document. So automatically they're contaminating the research environment.
There's a lot of medium, I mean,
I would have triggered a few people there, I bet you.
I think maybe in the history of humanity, there have been people with genuine mediumistic abilities, right? I don't discount that. No. But these days, I think there are a lot of kind of self-declared mediums who, for whatever reason, kind of suits them to call themselves mediums. I'm always, my skeptic dial kind of turns up when I meet a medium, because I want to know what's making them tick. And when they come to an investigation site, I kind of know, I want to know what research they've done on the site beforehand, because it's pretty easy, if you know you're going to a place, to pull out some names and things, that are associated with that place. It's not hard. Or to get some idea of things that you can. Also, they have a tendency to feed stuff back to you. They take information that is known or introduced and feed it back like it came to them by some other channel. Whereas in fact, hey, I just told you that. And what you need to do is record it. Like one thing we do with investigations, I'm sure you do too. So we've got, those little sound recorders, and we just turn them on at the start of the investigation and walk around and talking to them. And you record everything that's said. And when you go back through a conversation, say with a medium, you can hear exactly what was said. And you think, hang on a minute, you're just feeding me back something I told you 5 minutes ago. You can analyse it. So my skeptic dial really turns on. I'm not saying people don't have these abilities. I just think there's a lot of self-declared people that, for their own reasons, kind of claim abilities that they may actually not have.
I'm totally confident they exist and that they're out there. I just don't think we have. I think it's a rare thing. I don't think there are as many as we're seeing. We had this example I want to throw at you. We did an investigation a few years back with quite a.
What's going on out there?
Is that thunder?
Could be just traffic.
It's very windy here in Wellington.
I think that's actually thunder.
That's thunder.
Yeah. And rain, thunder and rain. It's been a windy week.
Yeah.
Monday was the worst.
We did an investigation on this quite prominent psychic, and it was at the Napier prison. I won't mention any names, but we were wandering around. She had her entourage, or he had his entourage.
Ooh, yeah.
edit that bit there.
Ooh, yeah.
And there was one moment where...
Look, everyone's gone. The place is empty.
It scared them away. There was one moment where he or she was standing in the gallows area of the Napier prison.
Yeah.
And he or she was saying, "Oh, I'm feeling this tightness around my neck." It's like, I don't know, I can't breathe. I can't breathe. I'm choking. I'm feeling this tightness. Oh, I think there's a rope around my neck, and it hasn't been tied on properly, and I think my neck's broken. Oh, I can't understand it. Oh, it feels horrible. It feels horrible. Directly above him or her was a big sign saying gallows.
Yeah.
And they had just been explaining how this was the hanging area and all that. And all we could do was sort of stand there and roll your eyes a bit and just
People have vivid imaginations, and it doesn't take much to actually imagine that stuff, does it?
Yeah, we did one at an old film theatre many years ago, and we had a medium that came along with us. and every part of the movie theatre had names and historical tags all over the building saying, "Oh, this was the old projection theatre, the projection booth where was it Alfred or Albert used to be the projectionist, and he passed away, and this was where he worked for many years, and his name was right outside the door, the big Alfred's projector room." And the medium stood outside there and went, "I'm getting an Albert, something like that. Used to work here," all that kind of thing.
I think it's Albert. It
Albert,
says up here,
right, right beside you, there's a sign there saying Albert's projection room. Things like this, and I don't know. I mean, I'm sure they exist, and I'm quite confident that they do exist, but just not as many as we're seeing out there. And I think they'll be doing a lot more good in the world if they did truly have the abilities that they say they have.
Well, I mean, one thing you could do is you could win lotto a few times and donate to your favourite charity. You could, there's a few things you could do that actually would be useful.
Sure.
That's maybe not a very good example, but
It's
you
valid,
could.
though.
I mean, there's quite a few bad things that say happen in New Zealand. Like the mosque shootings, the Christchurch earthquake. If you're able to somehow foresee those things, or maybe you could help. But that never happens.
No.
Those things that happen, people never.
It always comes out afterwards, after the earthquake.
Yeah.
It's
I had a nightmare of
yes,
that.
I felt this. I knew this. I knew there was going to be a disaster on this date, and why didn't you say something? You didn't. People died. I don't know, but we don't want to get too morbid about it. Too negative.
The mediums, the self-declared mediums I have met, have not in any way convinced me that they have any mediumistic abilities at all. But that's just my experience, and maybe I haven't met those right people yet.
It's funny. I was speaking to this psychic woman a few months back, actually, and she was very interested in coming on this Pint of Paranormal.
Oh, that was close.
Thunder in Wellington. It's getting nasty outside. And she was quite interested in sitting in here as you are with the Pint of Paranormal, and she was really good until I said to her, "Hey, she gives readings. She gives readings, and she makes a lot of money from her readings." And
They shut the door just now.
and she advertises herself as what New Zealand's most accurate psychic. I've seen quite a few psychics advertising themselves at that. But I was quite intrigued by this, and I said, "Yeah, that would be fantastic. And what we should do, should we meet up this weekend? That would be fantastic." And I think it was a Thursday night, and she said, "Yep, that would be great. Come to my office." And she had a place where she did her readings and her crystal stuff, and she was really into it, really full of enthusiasm. And I said, "Oh, while we're doing it, maybe you could give me a reading or something. Just give me a reading, and that would be, add a bit of fun to it, or it would be quite interesting. It might add a little bit to the Pint of Paranormal episode." And she said, "Oh, no, I can't really do that. I can't really just go and do readings because I have to have time to prepare." What does that mean? Time to prepare. Either Google Mark Wallbank, Facebook. You can find out a little bit about my life and what I'm up to at the moment just by Facebooking me.
Yeah, I can, for example, I get a sense that your wife is trying to contact you at the moment, but actually when I look at your phone, there's her face is on there with a little number 1 beside it.
I don't think you see it.
But I'm sensing that she's trying to contact you.
Yep.
Probably shouldn't pull the piss too much.
Yep. For those wondering what we're talking about, a little icon has come up. Sarah, my wife, her little emoji, her little what do you call it? The little face has popped up on my phone here saying that she sent me a message.
She looks like a disembodied head floating in the shadows behind us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about your book. You wrote a book with Joe Davey.
Yep.
What year did that come out?
2011, I think.
It was a long time ago. It seems ages ago.
Might have been 2010.
I read that book. I got that book and read it, loved it, and I make no mystery about it. Is that it was a huge influence on me, and you yourself have been an influence, knowing that there was somebody else in this country that was taking paranormal research seriously. I've always taken it seriously. It's my life. It's what I do. I take it maybe too seriously sometimes. But it was nice to find somebody that wasn't, how do I say this nicely, a nutter. You weren't out there, an unusual, quirky sort of eccentric sort of person. But
Some people would say that I am.
I know, but I wouldn't. So yeah, and I would sort of, I don't know. Maybe it's my beer. I don't know.
I like to think I'm reasonably level-headed about stuff.
Yeah, you are.
But
I like that.
You know, some people might say that's a bit two-faced because I like to think I'm pretty scientific about stuff. I'm not a professional scientist. I can't even say it. I'm not a professional scientist. It's a beer. Wellington craft beer. But people have got me pegged as a bit of an intellectual or a bit of an academic.
Not me, James.
I'm not either of those things. I'm probably too shallow for that, and I don't know enough. But I do read. I read books, you know. And when I get interested in stuff, I start accumulating books about it, like you do. And I'm sure you've got a pretty good collection of paranormal books.
You have to read. You have to
read, and you have to read quite widely.
Yeah.
And it's better than internet research, right? Internet research is useful, but reading books from different eras. And I love the Victorian era, you know, the late Victorian era when they were investigating mediums and psychic things. I just find that period fascinating. The people that were doing that back then, they were smart people, you know, they were the top-notch intellectuals of their day. And they were like second to nobody. And that, I find that period very inspirational. You know, William Crookes was an important scientist. There were a lot of these people, mathematicians, psychologists. William James practically invented psychology, wrote the book on it. He was a serious paranormal investigator. And later on, there's these people who were really, you know, they were widely read intellectuals, but they had the failing of arrogance, and that is that they considered themselves often superior to the people they were investigating. And that was maybe something of the time because they were educated and well read and, let's say, I'm going to say of a higher social class. And often the people that are investigating could have come from anywhere, and there was a certain arrogance. And they didn't really believe they could be duped. They thought they were kind of smarter than what they were investigating. And that was kind of their downfall, you know. But that was perhaps something of the times. I don't think we quite suffer from that today. But I just find this stuff fascinating, and I take a scientific approach, but I'm also, as we've discussed, I'm pretty open to experience. I've had a few experiences myself that I cannot explain, and I believe that a lot of people have had these experiences. I believe that most people, when they tell you about these things, are telling the truth, and I've no reason to expect that they're lying to me. And I just find it fascinating, and most of the things that people talk about and things that we investigate, we cannot explain. We can explain a few things with sort of physical examination of things, and some things I think can be explained. A lot of stuff is just, it's left in the dark. You know, we don't know what it is. We're not really any close to understanding it. But paranormal investigation, there's kind of two kinds, right? I mean, when you have a client, when you have a real person who is living in a place and has had experiences and they're thinking, what do I do? Do I keep living here? Do I move out? Do we cleanse the place? I don't know, what do we do? How can we help them? You have a real person there, or a group of real people, right? And it's actually a serious business. And if you intrude on the situation and you make things worse for them, and this is where I think a lot of mediums and psychics actually, they go in and they make things worse for people.
They do.
You know, they pick up on that person's fears and they kind of amplify them, and they make that person feel a whole lot worse than they started with. We try and do the opposite. You know, if anything, we try and explain stuff. We try and understand and maybe talk things down a little and really seriously look and listen. But the other thing is, like, when you've got an abandoned psychiatric hospital to explore, and it's to say, hey guys, just go for it. And that's just, you know, that's just fun. And it doesn't really hurt anybody. You know, you're not, you're going through the place and you're photographing it and you're trying to communicate with things. It's an adventure.
It is.
And you're engaging with the
love those
history.
ones, yeah.
And those things, I mean, it's great fun. I love that. But you haven't got this person who's actually suffering that you have to
show
deal with.
compassion and caring, and you have to be.
So that's when you can be like a ghost hunter. You know, when you're going through an old hospital or an old church or something, or an old theatre, you're ghost hunting, and that's just fun. I love that. When you have a real person in a real situation and they're asking for your help, that's a whole different ballgame. And that's when you really cannot screw up.
That's right. And a lot of teams aren't qualified.
They just shouldn't do that stuff. Yeah, do the old hospitals and theatres, fine. Nobody gets hurt unless you fall off stage, the orchestra pit. But you know, when you've got a person who is there's potential for it to go really wrong, and you know, I do things mostly by emails. I'm not that comfortable on the phone with people. People sometimes ask me to ring them. I'm not usually comfortable with that, but try to sort things out by email and offer to go and talk to them and that. You can only tell so much by email, and a lot of people, you know, really, they've got a health problem, you know, and it's fairly evident. And all over the Strange Occurrences website is like, you know, if you're experiencing this, consider these things. You really need to seek professional health care. And I'm not talking about a chiropractor or, you know, some fringe medicine. I'm talking about a doctor or a psychologist or a psychiatrist or someone in professional healthcare. You need to do that immediately. You know, what you're experiencing is probably more associated with your state of health than with anything paranormal. And if you go in as a paranormal investigator or a medium or a psychic and try and help that person who may be, you know, mentally ill or physically ill or both, you can do a real lot of harm. And there's been cases in New Zealand recently where people have offered psychic healing and things like that to people who, you know, they really need professional health care. And if you go into that territory, boy, watch out. You really shouldn't go there. And I sometimes email people back and say, look, I really cannot help you. You know, you seriously, the first thing you should do is go and see your GP.
You've got to rule that out first, don't you?
Yeah, but it's irresponsible to not do that. And even if you say it and they think you're insulting them or something and not believing them, you've got to say it anyway.
We've lost so many investigations, private resident investigations, because we've asked them about mental health. We send out a questionnaire and it has questions about medication and mental health issues and that kind of thing. Most of them, if they do have a mental health issue, will just reject the questionnaire and just you'll never hear from them again. But you have to ask those questions, and it's important because we aren't qualified mental health professionals. We're not qualified to deal with those sorts of situations. The last thing, a single mum living in a house with two young daughters who may be suffering from a bit of depression perhaps or something like that, the last thing she wants to hear is that there's a man that's in her room that is angry and doesn't like them living there. And I've personally been on an investigation with a team who asked me to come along with them as a consultant, and I came along with them. One of them was a medium, and that's what she said. She was in the house and she said, you know, I'm feeling the presence of a man and he's in his house and he doesn't like you guys being here. Now, for a mother who is living in fear because the kids are screaming, everyone's frightened because there's something in their house, to hear that, the last thing we should be doing is fueling fears. Whether there is a man in their house who is angry with them being there, whether there is that happening, we shouldn't be enforcing that. We shouldn't be fueling it. We should be trying to dispel that, dilute it a bit, find some answers, and try and offer them an alternative explanation or, you know, other avenues that they can try. But if it becomes obvious that it's a mental health issue, we should back it away.
And there are situations in New Zealand where, you know, people have died.
People have died,
you know, because they have not sought proper health care. They've gone with what the psychic healer or whatever has told them, and they've died. And you do not want to contribute or be involved in that situation. I mean, you just can't. You've got to be responsible, because if something, well, things, you know, things can come back to you. You know, it's not putting that very well, but you've just got to say the responsible thing, whether that is what the person wants to hear or not.
That's right.
It's got to be said sometimes.
It does. If you're a serious paranormal investigator, you have to do it. There is protocol. You have to be sensitive. You have to be structured. You have to have rules. You have to have regulations. You have to have guidelines, and you have to have things that you stick with strict. You know, I think you need to be straight up. If it's a mental health issue, you need to say, right, this is a mental health issue, we either just back away or we offer a direction. We've had people that have been seriously religious, full-on religious, and I'm talking about obsessively religious in their faith, and they're also mentally unwell. And you can tell this by the clutter in their house, the way that every wall will be full of just pictures and paintings, and every bit of space in that house is crammed. It's like there's.
You've been to my house, haven't you?
My house is the same, but
I don't have the religious stuff, but the other aspects of it. Actually, we've got quite a collection of like crucifixes and things. I started collecting them a while ago. Yeah, I buy them from the op shop. I'm sure they think that I'm quite religious, but you know, we've got a font. House. We've actually got a font from a church in the house. Yeah, I bought it because the other guy that was looking at it in the op shop. He looked like a devil worshipper, and I thought, he probably shouldn't buy that. I'm going to buy that. On that note,
yeah. So before we sort of went on that huge wild religious tangent, we're talking about James's book.
It's been a long week, folks.
Yeah, it has.
Book that was a while ago.
We're talking about James's book with Joe Davey, and
the book was written a while ago, and it was co-authored.
Yes.
Jo was pregnant with her first child, and she was in the United States for a lot of it, so we did a lot of it by Skype.
Oh, really?
Yeah, okay. Yeah. And we went down south. We hadn't done much South Island stuff, so the publisher paid for us to have a South Island road trip. And Jo flew in from somewhere in the States to Dunedin. And when she arrived, she hadn't had a very good time. She was pregnant, she wasn't very well, and she came off the flight not looking the best. So she was quite a sport, and she actually stuck it out and came round the trip with us. But we didn't actually have to carry her, but we weren't far off it. But she was good, and we did this road trip around Dunedin, Central Otago, up to Christchurch. We were in Christchurch a week before the second big earthquake, actually, and it was good. And we met some interesting people and went some interesting places. And look, I have reread the book since I've written it. Of course, I have. I stand by everything in it, and I don't want to change any of it. I mean, I'm not saying my views haven't changed or whatever since then, but I don't want to go back on any of it. I'm pretty happy with what's in there.
Well, it captures an era too, and it captures an era of James Gilberd and his paranormal research. This is your period, and now you've probably moved on to other things now. Your perceptions have changed, your personality's possibly evolved into something else.
Well, I think the whole paranormal scene's changed. I mean, when we started, we were one of the few. We were one of the only groups with a website. That didn't last long. Pretty quickly, there were quite a few other groups sprung up, and we did, co-investigations with some of them, and we did a lot of stuff between about 2007 and about 2010 or 11. And after that, we've been less and less active. Part of that's just getting older. But the scene has changed, and the number of groups has changed, right? And there's been a few that have sprung up, found that it's actually really hard to get investigations, and have disappeared again without really doing anything. And there has not been very many groups in the country that have been around for a long time.
The reality is that having a team is actually not very easy.
No.
Getting a bunch of like-minded people together who are on the same level as you, and putting them all together so that you meld together really well, so you gel together as a unit, is really hard.
We also, frankly, I'm a bit middle-aged. I'm in my mid-50s now, and the whole team is like we just don't get out and do investigations much. And when we have done, it's been with a couple of the younger people that have come in, because they're they've got a bit more time. Most people are now what used to be our team have got families and spending a lot more time with their work. And you get into midlife, your work takes over, families take over. So we don't behave as a team the way that we used to sort of 10 years ago, right?
No.
The things have changed, but the whole scene has changed, right? Yes. And in Wellington, it's really hard to get big investigations and big places where you can go around with the walkie-talkies and do the whole bit. You can hardly get into anywhere now.
But with the internet now, it's changed how we can react with our audiences and how we can sort of spread the information.
Yeah.
And like you, I mean, your team might not be out there physically investigating as much, but you're still online. You're still putting the information out there. A lot of the information that you're putting out there is fresh, current, because with the photo analysis and all that, it's all fresh and new.
And I still get the press calling me.
Yeah.
I mean, the last time they called me was to do with this government building in Wellington where there was seemed to be a poltergeist, like the puppeteer poltergeist thing. And it didn't quite turn into a story, so I did a TV interview and everything, but it didn't run in the end because I think they kind of suppressed it because they didn't want it to blow up. I'm not saying that in any conspiracy way, it's just that it sort of hit the Herald and the Don Post a bit and stuff, but the government department ministry sort of brought the lid down on it. And to be honest, I don't think there was anything there. I'd looked at it 6 or 8 months earlier. I knew about it for a while, and I think it was some agitation among some of the people that were working there, some discontent, some line up into a sort of... But I don't know, because I never got through the investigations, I can't really say. But put it this way, the TV interview never ran. But, the press call me up and they say, look, this is going on, what do you think? And I say, well, hang on a minute, can you send me some links? And, let's just, before I talk to you, I want to find out a bit more about it. And I get emails still from all over the world. I get, a number of emails per week asking about photographs and videos. And I have quite a knowledge of photography I've built up over the last 30 or so years. So I can bring that to the paranormal table, and I find that really interesting.
Well, you're still contributing?
Yep.
You're still contributing and you're still active in the field. I mean, there's active and there's active. I mean, it's like, you as far as I'm concerned, you are fully immersed in the field. And not as an armchair skeptic, I don't see you as an armchair skeptic, but I see you as a professional in the field that is constantly working behind the scenes, working with photography, which is an important part of the paranormal research field, is photography, video. Those two elements there, I think, are some of the most important. They're very important. But you're analysing and...
Just playing with this light effect. This is the photographer. What is this doing? This is interesting.
See, I'm seeing this as posing.
Yeah, this is what I do. But no, photography is really interesting, and it's constantly progressing as well. The technology is getting better and better and more widely available. There's a point where everyone had compact digital cameras in the early 2000s, and that's when we got this flood of orbs. Nowadays, cell phones, everyone's shooting on cell phones. You get those little lens flares, the little green ones, but also the phones do this thing where they do internal software things, like, they actually start moving people's heads off their bodies and giving them extra limbs and stuff. And they get a lot of those kind of inquiries, like, hey, what's happened? Why have I got 3 arms? And it's something in the phone that's done it when it's processed your photos. And when I first saw those, I thought, crikey. I still don't understand it because they won't tell you how their software works. But there's all these things that crop up, and you get the same kind of emails coming in, and a year later it's different, and a year later it's different again as the technology changes.
The research is ongoing, it's I love it. Yeah, it's still, I mean, I'm always happy to come down to Wellington.
It's a good place. It's a pity every building's got a friggin' earthquake sticker on it. They won't let you into anything now. Health and safety land.
It's crazy.
They won't just turn you loose in the building anymore. It's got to be like 2 people with hard hats and safety boots follow you around everywhere at all times. Well, it's been good having a chat. I enjoy our little chats.
It's big. We have to make it more than annually.
Yeah. How are we going to wrap this up, Mark? Without going off on some other tangent.
I know. Oh well. Okay. Well, there's a shitload we can talk about. There's a lot of stuff we could dredge up, I guess, from our personal histories. But I think we'll call it quits there, and we'll end it there. We've gone well over our limit.
Next time we should do like a head-to-head, like Griff Rhys Jones and Mel Smith. You sit there at a table and kind of,
with my
face
profile.
each other.
With my profile.
Yeah, and mine. Yeah. I use my chin to turn light switches on.